So we're going to next hear from some OCCI members, and we would like, though, to take a second to acknowledge all of the OCCI members who are here today. So for any who aren't speaking, who are in the room, could you please stand up just so that we can thank you publicly, just with a round of applause. So for anyone who's been working with the OCCI from the beginning, there are people sitting in the audience. There we go. So as I said, the next portion of our event includes presentations from various OCCI members. We have some committee updates for you, as well as a couple of important and timely messages about the impact of our work on the communities that we serve. Just as a quick update on the Communications Committee, I'm going to keep this really brief because I've been up here a lot today. So we hope that you're all acquainted with the website. It's OCCI.ca, and hopefully you've all signed up for our newsletters so that we can keep you informed and up to date. We'd like to highlight the events and PD page. So that's where we feature special events and any upcoming professional development opportunities so that you can stay abreast and know how you can fulfill your 10 hours of PD every year. And if anyone has questions about the framework, we are continuously developing our FAQ page. And so as you have questions and you don't see them there, write to us and we'll get them answered for you. So next we'll be hearing about the history of the OCCI, the accreditation, and the application process. So we will hand the mic over to the next three speakers, to Soheila, Khatami, to Sepideh, Salimi, and also to Lola, Bendana, and I've missed a sheet, so I'm just going to grab it. Okay, so I'll just read through the bios of each of them. So Soheila Khatami. Soheila is a professional and OCCI accredited interpreter and certified translator. She is one of the original founders of the Association of Professional Language Interpreters, APLI. Soheila is also a member of the OCCI representing APLI and is currently the chair of the Accreditation Subcommittee of OCCI. Soheila is passionate about supporting interpreters and creating an amicable environment for all sectors of this profession. A little more about Lola Bendana. Thank you, Paul, for getting us into that. Lola has been involved in the translation and interpreting field for over 25 years. Since 1997, she has been the director of Multi-Languages Corporation. Presently, she serves on the board of directors of the Language Industry Association of Canada, ALIA, and is the president of the association, chair of the translation committee, and member of the interpreting committee. Lola is a member of the Canadian Advisory Committee to ISO TC 37, where she participates as an expert delegate to create international standards for translating and interpreting. She's a member of the Canadian Council on Community Interpreting, and an organizing member of the Ontario Council on Community Interpreting. And then we will hear from Sepideh. Sepideh Salimi is here to speak to us about the administration of the accreditation application process. Sepideh is a graduate of English Translation and Interpretation program from Azad University in Iran. She's a professional and accredited interpreter. Sepideh is the treasurer and vice president of APLI. She's the APLI representative member of OCCI and the administrator of the OCCI accreditation process. So I guess we will start with Lola for the history of the OCCI.
Thank you, Grace. And thank you, Paul, and all the OCCI members. That was certainly off the agenda. I was supposed to be in charge of the agenda yesterday. And as Don mentioned, this has been such a journey. And besides all the amount of work we have done for professionalization, the friends we have acquired, like Paul, I have been in every single committee with Paul, that, to the point that once he told me I created a folder in my email called Lola because of the number of emails that we exchange and the amount of work we have done together. So this is absolutely a group effort, a team effort. So I'm privileged to work with this team of colleagues. So there is a lot that actually happened behind the scenes. For me, it goes almost 30 years ago. When I was doing my internship in university, my very first assignment was to interpret for Nicaraguan refugees in the Costa Rican camps. Last week I was reading the RFP for the Assyrian refugees, and it took me back then, it took me 30 years ago. And that's when I got actually in love with the mission and with the conviction that interpreters actually save lives on a regular basis. That's what you are here to do. And this work of OCCI is not something that happened in the last 3 years. We know OCCI formed 3 years ago, but it actually built from other initiatives that you can see on the screen. And because we evolve as a profession, we have to evolve the vehicles we use for this professionalization process. And we go back to 2003 to ACTI, the Association of Canadian Corporations in Translation and Interpretation. And that Paul was the first one. He was actually the president of ACTI at the time, and we were discussing how come the private sector is all the way here. We know that the hospitals are doing something, and MCI is doing something. Why we don't all go together? And then 2003, the very first round of multi-stakeholder representation started to happen and evolve. From there, we had an education committee, we had a standards committee. The education committee evolved into the curriculum advisory committee, which actually Diana is somewhere over there. And that we actually created the LITP, the Language Interpreting Training Program, which launched in September, I believe, 2006 at Seneca College. Back then, for all these initiatives, people will say, that's impossible. And actually it was possible. And right now we have over 7 different colleges offering the program and sitting around the OCCI table. We also have AIA, the Language Industry Association, involved since the very beginning. We had an interpreting committee where we actually promoted the national standards. We translated it into French to make sure that it was fully Canadian and accessible. And we even brought it to the international level. So the ISO standards on community interpreting, which now is a guideline, was based on the Canadian standard. And we have another person, Elida, who actually worked intensively on that particular project. So as you can see, there are a lot of people actually working in the different projects. Of course, we have to mention the Healthcare Interpretation Network. The HIN actually provided training back in 2004, 2005, had several committees, communication, education, created actually the national standards and managed to put together Critical Link, AIA, ACTI, and HIN to make sure that the standards were not only multi-stakeholder, but were national. We have representation from across Canada in the HIN standard. And there are quite a few people in the room. You will see the faces, Axel, Diana again, Paul, Estella, Lisette, who has been there for many, many years. Critical in Canada, as I said, was a part. And we have some critical stakeholders that have been participating all along. The Ministry of Citizenship, the Ministry of the Attorney General, they have been sitting in every single committee, making an effort to raise the bar and at least to set those minimum benchmarks that we want to have. And finally, ISO. We have been represented at the international level and bringing what the expertise from Canada into the ISO committees. So, as I mentioned, from 2003, we have those multi-stakeholder sessions, and we did research. We looked, what are the other professions doing to get to where they are and they are recognized as professional? So having an accreditation ACI card doesn't mean that we just came out of the blue. We actually did our homework. What is needed? And we identified many years ago that there are 4 steps. There is a system to this madness. So the very first one, we needed to have a standardized post-secondary training. This happened for the teachers, the social workers, the occupational therapists. They have to have that system, and we developed it. It was launched, as I said, 2006. We also need to have standards, something that you can say, this is not only how the interpreter should have standards of practice, but all the stakeholders. So the national standards is the very first document in the world that includes roles and responsibilities for the interpreters, but also for the clients and for the interpreting service providers or agencies. So it's absolutely a unique document that was needed also as the groundwork for what we are trying to achieve. Third step is the accreditation, and that's what we are celebrating today. This is July 2015, and you will think, how come it took you 7 years to get from a stage 2 to a stage 3? Well, it takes 7 years. It takes a lot more than that. It is a lot of work, and we got here. So it is really, really a milestone for all of us to get to the accreditation stage. And we still have one more to go. And that is when we reach that critical mass, as Donna mentioned, if next year we manage to have 500, 1,000 accredited interpreters, all of you go through it, believe in it, and go through the process, then we can go to the next level. And the next level may take us 10 years, 15 years. It's okay, we need to start. And that is actually the advocacy for legislation. When I mention legislation, just to be clear, it is reservation of practice for interpreters. We know that it's impossible actually to reserve the practice for every single assignment out there, but at least we can advocate that reservation of practice to accredited interpret be done for medical, for legal, or for when the life of people are on the line. So that's something, this is not really the end, it's just the very beginning. This is where we need to start doing more and more advocacy with government organizations, purchases of services, and so on. So basically, my message is the future is in our hands, let's do it. And a big, big thanks to OCCI, like these are the most amazing people that you will think of, like even Soheila, I believe yesterday gave us a new title. She says we are the Wonder Girls after we exchanged around 200 emails. So it is really a wonderful collaboration between all of us, and it's my privilege to work with all of you. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Sorry, Paul. I think when I said Wonder Girls, I didn't mean to be not including Paul, so I do apologize for that. So I'm going to talk about the structure of OCCI, and you've been hearing OCCI, and so let's work out and see who are these guys. We try to make sure that every sector of this industry is included in OCCI and everyone's voice has been heard. So the general division would be the 4 that you can see on your screen. We have the training institutions and the testing bodies. These are the colleges, and OCCI officially recognizes and acknowledges the college program for future trainees. And this is for the fact that we want to make sure the training is a standard training and it comes from one major source. So in the future, everyone would receive the same training and curriculum. And then we also have the interpreters service providers, or ISPs as we refer to them. These are the agencies, and we want to make sure that the whole OCCI hears from what the concerns of the agencies are. Interpreters work very closely with agencies, so we want to make sure that the environment is not only good for the interpreters, but also for the agencies, and that is the only way that professionalization can take place. So they are sitting around the table, voicing their opinions and concerns so that we can smooth things out together for one better service. We also have the consumers, public service providers, and then those who actually receive the services of an interpreter, both in English and in French. So again, we want to make sure that those who receive this service, they have a voice, and they can tell us what they want, what they expect, and what is the quality of the work and service that they are receiving. And of course, the Interpreters and Interpreters Association. And again, now APLI is the voice of all interpreters. We don't have everyone as members of APLI, but we are hoping that more and more interpreters become a member of APLI, so we can eventually take their opinions and concerns to the table of OCCI and work things out in a harmonious fashion. So these are the major divisions of the OCCI. Now, within that large group, and I believe there are sort of 30-odd people that are sitting around the OCCI, divided into those 4 groups, we have working groups. So the work is divided amongst us. We have formed various groups, and each group will look after a certain area. They work together, they establish certain criteria and they discuss things, and then they bring it to the larger table and they discuss it with the larger group and get approval. So we have the various, and then working groups are established as time comes along as well. But I've put out a few of the working groups here. The tier accreditation group was the group that was looking at, into the framework of accreditation, but the whole approval of the accreditation came from the larger group. But they worked on it, they took it to the table of the larger group, and they got the approval and their opinion, and then it was finalized. We have the education group, which really are the colleges. They try to collaborate with each other, making sure that the programs are on the same line, they use the same curriculum, or if they don't, they try to accommodate one another, they help each other out, and that's why OCCI really approves and acknowledges the LITP program for the training of the interpreters, and we are hoping that through this we can improve the education area on an everyday basis. The business practices, we discussed this in quite a lot of detail, and this working group is the part that makes sure that the agencies and those who hire the services of interpreters abide by certain rules and regulations as well. This was very important, in fact, and I know that a lot of the interpreters sitting around this hall today would be interested to know that we discussed it in detail that professionalization is not going to happen if it's only the interpreters that need to abide by certain rules and regulations. It is every part of this sector of the industry. So the agencies, both government funded and the private ones, are the ones that also need to be professional. And I know that even the last year we've had a number of issues coming up, but this is the exact issue that we're going to address and make sure that those agencies working the market, hiring these interpreters, really, they are professionalized as well. Some of them, they already are, but we want to be only working with those who actually are looking at this as a professional and scrupulous business that they are running. We have the stakeholders engagement working group, making sure that the stakeholders' voices are heard and they are all equally participant in any decisions that are made. And we have the OCCI structure that, again, that looks into the internal structure of OCCI. So these are the working groups, and we established further working groups. For instance, for today's event, we had a launch working group, and we tried, a group of us, to try to work together more intensely for launching this great event. Now, we are very proud that this is the first in the universe, in the world, that the interpreters, community interpreters, are being accredited. So we're really proud of that, and we really would like to thank those of you who were the pioneers, who made the application, who went through digging out all those certificates from years back, and you're still doing the same thing to really set the foundation for this accreditation. So thank you very much. And we need to be proud of the fact that this group is the first in the world, basically, to be accredited. As I mentioned, we want to hear everyone's voice, so that's the second one. Now, the criteria that we developed for the accreditation, it didn't develop out of blue and thin air. We conducted a number of surveys from the interpreters. This was conducted through the APLI membership and other interpreters. So the survey went to the interpreters, the results were collected, and the criteria was set. And this criteria, we look at it as a really solid. We try to be as comprehensive, and it is strictly applied. So it's a challenge sometimes, but it is what it is in order to establish the foundation for the future. Now I'm just going to quickly go over what is required of the interpreters. This was established. The English proficiency assessment, a major requirement. The days that a person could speak English and could do interpretations, those days are over. So a person who wants to become an interpreter needs to have English proficiency proof. And that is very important. A lot of the times we had complaints about people who just speak English because mom or dad spoke English at home and they are doing interpretation. So we're very proud to say that that is done and over with. The quality of this service is improving on a day-to-day basis, and these are the first steps. Post-secondary education is required, and that is again something that we like to make sure that every person who's working the field, all the agencies who are hiring these interpreters can be sure that the interpreters are educated and the English level is at a professional status. We also need to have the CELISAT or ILSAT. These are the language tests that we have here in Canada, and they're testing you between English and the other language. All of the members who are being accredited, they need to have this certificate for the English and the other. So some of the members, they speak more than one language, so they would need this certificate for any of the languages that they speak. The college training, the LITP program is required. I just need to mention that if anyone was trained before 1st of January 2015, there is a grandfathering system here. So that is recognized that many of us were trained by community-based organizations in the past, and those are grandfathered in. But as of 1st of January 2015, it will be the LITP recognized program. And then a membership in a professional association. Again, the professional associations that are more active within the OCCR are ATU and APRI. ATU, as you know, is the Association for Translators and Interpreters of Ontario, and APRI is us, basically, Association for Professional Language Interpreters. We are very much involved with the accreditation system. So these are the requirements of application for ACI. And then we have specialization for, again, these were taken from the surveys that we sent to our interpreters. Medical, we need the training or the medical terminology or training course which contains a test or an examination at the end with 250 hours of experience. The same goes with legal, and those who want to be specialized as trainers of interpreters. Again, the survey suggested that you need to be an ACI first, and then go through the adult education training, which is available at the college level, and then also have 600 hours of experience. I know that many of you may have questions about these, but we will be answering them both at the end of this session and also at the APLI's AGM, which is coming up this Saturday. Now, the accreditation is not for a lifetime. It only lasts you 2 years, and then it's renewable. And the reason for this is that we want to make sure that each person who works as an interpreter, as a professional interpreter, maintains certain quality, because we believe that no matter how difficult is a first exam or the framework, again, you need to maintain certain hours of professional development. Again, our survey of interpreters suggested 10 hours, and that's the number of hours we have taken. So 10 hours of professional development is required from each ACI per year, and at the end of 2 years you need to provide those to the administrators of accreditation, and at which time your accreditation is renewed for another 2 years. Just basically, I'm just going through what is the benefit of all these work, all the criteria or the frameworks that has been put in place. For the end users, we want to make sure that a quality service has been provided to overcome the language barriers. We want to make sure that this quality is supported, and at the end of the day, we want to make sure that basically those who receive this service can be assured and can feel confident that a good service is provided to them. The interpreter service providers, I think they're getting a lot of benefit from this, in the sense that if you have an agency, and whether it be non-for-profit or for-profit or any of the government agencies that are working the field hiring the interpreters, if you see the blue card, you know that they've gone through all of this. You know that their English proficiency proof has been provided. You know that they've received training. You know that they have received they've done their CELISAT or ILSAT, and you know that they're keeping up to date with their 10 hours of professional development. So a flash of that blue card, you're good to go. Training institutions, we want to support them highly to improve and every day make sure that the quality of the training that are providing is good and gets better on a day-to-day basis with their collaboration, and also hearing the voice of other sectors of this industry. And then the associations, we want to make sure that we bring the voice of our interpreters to the table. Any concerns that they have, as much as possible, their voice is heard, and any issues that they have, at least it could be heard and discussed, and with collaboration with other organizations we could overcome. So basically creating a good environment, a professional and harmonious environment for the whole industry. And finally, I'd just like to say that our association, APLI, we are federally registered. We are the voice of all interpreters. The board of directors of APLI, they're all interpreters themselves. So they know what it's like to run around this big city to do interpretation, to how to fix your time, how your scheduling works. So we understand what it is to work as an interpreter, and for that reason, we are proud to be the voice of all interpreters. Our mission and vision only concentrates on the issues of interpreters, and we believe in that harmonious environment to be created for all the sectors. So we like to work with the agencies, with the training colleges and other sectors. And it is a service that we provide to our nation. We are multicultural, and we want to provide this service as best as possible. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here, and your support means a lot to us. Now, I know that you probably have a number of questions in regards to the application process, and I will try to address as many as I can in the time that we have. On the screen, you can see the application form. To find this application, you can find it on OCCI website, also on APLI website. Right now, you need to print out the form and fill it and submit it with your credentials, copies of your credentials. In the future, near future, we're hoping even as soon as January 1st, 2016, we will have an online application where you can fill in the application online and submit it online. So, in terms of how to complete the application, all the requirements that you can see on the application form, they have to be met, and you need to send supporting documents for each and every one of them. If you are sending your credentials which are not in English, please send us the translated document, and also if there's any need for any verification, please submit the verification with the document. So that will save us a lot of time in processing your application. For the fees, if you are applying just for the ACI for accreditation, $125 is the application fee. However, if you are applying for specializations too, you just need to add $25. $150 will cover for up to 3 specializations, application for 3 specializations. If you're going to apply for specializations separately, you will need to pay $50, which is the application fee for up to 3 specializations again. For the photos, please send us frontal face image, the passport photos, and the quality of the photo is important too, because then when we print the card, it should be something that is recognizable. If you have any inquiries or if you want to get an update on the situation of your application, please send all the inquiries to OCCI@applycanada.org, and we will try our best to reply as soon as possible. So the processing time, if you, given that you have sent all the documents required and the application is complete, because it's essential to send a complete application, you're looking at something between 6 to 8 weeks as a processing time. If the application is missing any of the components, then it will take more time for us to get back to you to inform you about the missing component, and then waiting for you to submit that one. So to summarize, please try to make sure everything is in place, you are meeting all the requirements, and you're submitting all the supporting documents for each one of the requirements, and the application fee also. And please do not refrain from sending us extra and more documents than is required. So thank you very much. I'll be here if there are any questions. I will be more than happy